there's a new little article that came out by the Four Letter Network talking about, he was free and clear how the leak of John Gruden's email led to the fall of Commanders owner Dan Snyder. All right. Now, it's a pretty long it's a very, very long article, and it kind of starts with how the Raiders were approached and what Mark Davis found himself having to deal with Coach John Gruden and the leaked emails that led to his demise as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Then it gets into the leakers, the identities, and how they have still remained unknown, and how it was, directed at DeMorris, then it's directed at Daniel Snyder. It was directed at the Raiders. I mean, there are a lot of people that were actually in the crosshairs of all of this, but none bigger than Daniel Snyder getting caught up into more and more legal drama as this unfolded, and ultimately ended up being a major undoing of him being the owner of the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. What's your I've never had this conversation with you. What is your take on how all of this has unfolded with the Snyder saga as it continues?
Get him up out of there. Good. Yeah. Good. I'm glad Pierce gone. I think I don't know if the sale is completely final yet, but he's bad for business, man. He's bad for the NFL, bad for business. We know what's been happening in his building, and you don't need a partner like that in the NFL, right? You don't. The team has been bad. The fans do not like the team. The city doesn't like the team. Players have not liked playing for him. And get him up out of there, man. Owners have lost their teams for much, for things not as badly alleged happened in his building over the years, right? Get him up out of there. Who? I know there was, he might blackmail. Who cares? Just get him up out of there. LaVar, and every Washington fan I know is so happy he's gone. I'm sure you have your thoughts on him as well, having played there. But, the story's interesting because, the heart of it is, who leaked the John Gruden emails. For those who do not remember, it was 2 years ago now, emails were leaked that John Gruden had said, had used racist tropes, had, bashed Goodell, and used some slurs doing that as well. And emails got out, and eventually he was fired for that. And the question is, how'd these get out? Because this is part of an investigation, of a lawsuit, and should not have gotten out. And, the prevailing wisdom has been Dan Snyder let this out because he wanted to sort of take everyone down with him, right? Mm-hmm. And be able to kind of, to blackmail everyone in the NFL, which is everyone's thought that was this was out because of that. There was a thought that there was a story about Jerry Jones that was out because of Daniel Snyder, and the article goes into was it Goodell who leaked this? Was it DeMorris Smith, who I heard that before, but the timing is kind of interesting. It was Snyder, right? It was Snyder. He threatened to do all these things and did it anyways, and now he's gone. I'm just glad he's gone, LaVar. I am so glad for the NFL and for the Washington fans and players that will have a new owner who will care much more about winning, who will put the resources in. They need to win, who will hire the right people to help the franchise win, and will not threaten to blackmail the league when it doesn't go his way.
Yeah. I lived this firsthand as a Washington football player. The environment was a toxic environment. I can confirm that firsthand. Dan Snyder is not a morally and ethically sound man. His rules of engagement change. Someone that seemingly seemed like a really, really dope dude in the beginning ultimately would show you his true colors.
You got there about the same time, right?
Yeah, I was his first draft pick.
Yeah.
I was
there
his
we go.
first draft pick. So if there would be someone who would know, it'd probably be me.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I defer to you.
He's a super cool dude to begin with, and on the surface level, he was super dope dude. We got really close. I always tell people the story that I was actually at some point I was so close with him and the family. I would visit his dad while he was ill in the hospital, and I was with him, around him for his last days, around him and his mom. I was around his dad and his dad's wife, so to make sure it's clear, and I was a pallbearer for him and his his funeral. We were really close. We used to sit together on the team playing. We played chess on the way to games or back from games. We'd have long conversations. We've gone out to dinner. Like, we were, like, the beginning of our relationship was a really, really harmonious relationship. It wasn't until the politics of a contract got into the situation that really showed that maybe it wasn't that we couldn't be cool. It was just that business always was going to be more important than anything else, more important than relationships, more important than anything else. And whatever that business is, as to how he sees it or, interpreted how business is supposed to look and how it's supposed to feel at the workplace with your employees and everything that's associated with it. I think he just had a very, very detached lens, out of focus lens of what a healthy work environment is supposed to be. And for one reason or another, everybody has their whole ideas and their assessments as to why they think Daniel Snyder has been the way that he has been. But, for me, I looked at the situation and I just basically thought to myself, it's kind of like simple things that you could have did to really, really rally your team, rally your building around you and around what the team represented. And it was just constantly opportunities for that to take place. That never happened. It just never happened, right? You could, I always say, you could know the people who are taking care of the facility. I speak to Vladdy every day. I speak to Miss BJ every day. Whoever our trainers were, I speak to them every day, spend time with them. Our coaches, in the weight room, speak to them, spend time with them every day.
He know those people?
No. Not only did he not know who they were, but if you were not a person of note, you were not allowed to. Now, these are reports, and I was told this firsthand, by the way. So this isn't like a report. This is me in the building, and I'm being told by other employees, my colleagues in the building, that this is what they've been told to do, which was you have to put your head down and don't look at him. When he comes in, don't even look at him. Right? And if you're in a situation where you're addressing him, you have to say you have to address him as Mr. Snyder. You can't call him Dan. You got to call him Mr. Snyder. So it was just things like, trying to establish an environment to me that was more set and geared towards really, really building up and stroking an ego. And I think that it became the arrogance and the culture of the upper brass to be the same way. Bruce Allen was a douchebag, big time. 100%, 10 out of 10 douche, right? Other guys that have been with him, I'm sorry. Listen, I ain't gonna hold you, but I'm gonna just keep it real. Tony Wiley, you were a schmuck while you were dealing with him as well. Carl Swanson, you were
now I'm learning what words we can. Now I'm learning what words we can use on Trusted Radio. Okay, all right, I'm taking note. Let's go.
Carl Swanson, you were schmucking it out too. Anybody, Mark, you were schmucking it out too. I don't forget your last name for some reason. But it just seemed like everyone who came in and Vinny, you were my guy, but you know what? You were schmucking it out too, Vinny. All these guys would come in, and what happened was they would give in and give way to the arrogance of how Dan Snyder handled things, and they became a part of an entourage. So when Jay Gruden came in and took over as a coach, he did the same exact thing. When McGloin came in as the GM, he did the same thing. Like, everything was about just ego tripping. Like, your ego goes to a whole nother place because that's what Dan Snyder valued was the ego and the feel of how him and his cronies, how they moved and how they looked when they did things at the owners' meetings, going into the games, whatever it may have been. It was all just based off of a facade. You were creating this image of being like the dude. I mean, he was walking around, shouts out to his security because Mike and those guys, all the guys that were doing security, I mean, super dope dudes, but he'd have fully armed, agents that were walking with him around the building.
What?
Like, he was never alone. Like, he was never by himself. He always had his security with him, and they were always
That's
in
weird,
their
man.
Super weird, my G. Super weird. Like, no matter where he was at, he was moving around.
Was he afraid of the players?
See, to me, I don't think it was him being afraid.
It was intimidation.
It was intimidation. Like, he was trying to create the intimidation factor, or the factor of this larger-than-life figure, and no one ever looked at him as larger-than-life. They just looked at him as Little Danny.
That's why.
Right, Little Danny. And so, anyway, it's interesting that this report coming out, as it applied to someone else that was being pinpointed, it was still linked back to Washington and the culture that was there, and it ultimately led to a lot of investigative moves. It led to the pressure of him having to eventually, put this team on the market. Now, if you're paying attention, the team still hasn't been sold. It hasn't gone through yet.
Correct.
We're in July. This is July 12th. This has been going on for quite some time. The team still has not settled on its new ownership group, and it has not moved. Now, while I continue to hear that it's moving and it's going to happen, it still hasn't happened yet. So I find that to be interesting. He's the sole owner, I believe, of all of the Washington team, because if you recall, he was being fought by other minority owners, and he ended up winning or getting them up out of the way. So it ended up just being his team. But I mean, there's just so many details of this. Like, I know some of the cheerleaders that were involved with what took place, and they're always constantly hitting me up telling me, make sure you put it out there. We want to see the report released. We need to be able to see what the report is. And I don't disagree with her. I don't disagree with them. And Melanie is one of the people I call it out by name, because they protest and they go from city to city when these things are taking place. Melanie is part of the people that lead the group of women that were in these situations that took place. And I think that this needs to be released. The report needs to be released. Because the biggest thing is, I know we're up on it, but I'll just say this to finish off. Regardless of him selling the team, it should not remove all culpability from the things and the damage that he's done. Like, he ruined my career. Like, the way that thing was handled, it pretty much ruined my career. And I don't really, for a long time, I guess I had denial issues about like how much it impacted me and how much it affected me. I was upset by it, and I was very, very bothered by it. And I was told for a long time I was really angry. And I didn't see it. I didn't believe it. I didn't feel it. But I feel like a lot of the fans that said it, they were probably correct. Like, I was upset. I was angry at somebody that I was so close with that we could end up where we were at, and it was connected to the most important part of my life, which was playing ball. But now I just look at it from the standpoint of the collateral damage done to people that maybe didn't, handle it or get through it as well as I may have. Like, I moved on with my life. I have done well since, but there are a lot of people that were impacted by it in a way where, it was just very difficult for them. I think they should have their opportunity to get closure too. And I think that the reason why all of these conversations are continuing to linger on is because he's trying to get out of having any type of culpability once he sells this team. And I think that that's something that should not be compromised. I don't think it should be compromised. Just because you sell the team doesn't mean that you get to be exonerated from any and all claims that have been against you that actually led to you having to sell the team in the first place. So,
yeah, well, I think that's part of what he's trying to stipulate as if he sells the team, then you can't release the report, right? He's trying to get that stipulated, I believe.
That's exactly right. He does not want the damage to further continue after he's done selling this team. And I just don't see how that there's any way that you can there's no way that you can do that. Like there's no way that they can say that.